Hello, class. Today we're going to work on value. Value is one of the elements of art. It's probably one that you've worked with a lot. We usually call it shading as kids. We learn to call shading the this new term that we're learning is value. Um, we grow up saying, "Well, I'm shading this darker or lighter." And so in art, we're using the vocabulary that most artists will use, which is value. Value is the range from dark to light. So to demonstrate this range, we're going to use a scale. This scale is 11 steps, and each little box is 1 inch by 1 inch. We're going to use a ruler for that. And then we're going to start to shade each one of these squares, 1 inch squares, and we're going to shade them by using what's called hatching and cross hatching. Hatching and cross hatching implies that we're using single lines next to each other and they're evenly spaced from each other and they're all in the same direction. Once we shade in one direction, then we're going to change the direction perpendicular to it. So if I'm shading at a horizontal, then I'm going to be cross hatching at a vertical. And if I'm shading at a 45-degree angle, I'm going to be, my next step would be to shade in the opposite 45-degree angle. This gives us a more evenly distributed shade or value in each of the squares. It keeps the values separated and it is a more controlled way of using value, right? It really helps to use a sharp pencil here, and to get a darker value you just cross hatch even more versus scribbling, right? This is not scribbling, this is controlled shading or controlled use of value with a pencil. So each step should be gradually getting darker and darker and darker until we get to 100% dark. Notice the first box is completely empty. After we do our value scale of 10 steps starting from 0, then we're going to create a cube. For this you can use a ruler and use true verticals and true horizontals to draw your cube. All right, we need 3 sides to the cube, and most people will be able to tackle that. Now, for a sphere, which is a ball form, a sphere, we're going to create a circle. And to draw a circle, you just have to hover above the paper as you're making a circular rounds, and then lightly draw it in, right? So to shade, we're going to use the same technique of using hatching and cross hatching. Here you can see me making the lines evenly distributed from side to side. This gives us a controlled value. So we should have a dark, medium, and a light side to our cube. Here we're also thinking of where light is coming from and where it is going, so that we can use a cast shadow. Shadow is cast by the object blocking the light. And we should have a pretty good idea of where the light is coming from just by looking at your drawing. So we need some light logic, and using values helps us do that. For the sphere, we want to start with the lightest values, leave an area without any shading, because we want that to be representing our 0%. And then we're going to use cross hatching in a circular or half moon type of form to describe the roundness of this sphere or a ball shape. And notice we're going to have what's called a core shadow, where we have this shadow that's turning with the form of the ball. Right here I'm defining the edges a little bit more, blending in these shades, and then as I get further and further closer to the edge here, I'm going to get a darker value. But we want to leave a part of the bottom there at like 90 to 80%, right where it's touching the surface, so that we can create a cast shadow. Again, the cast shadow is the object blocking the light as it's cast onto the ground. And so here we can get a little darker, and we're using again cross hatching to create these different values. Okay. You may smudge a little bit, but I don't want this to turn into a big smudge fest where everyone's just kind of using their fingers everywhere on the paper. In fact, if you really want to smudge and blend these values, you can use a cotton ball, or you can use a dry paper towel to smudge, so you're not getting this on your fingers and you're not getting your oil off your hands onto the paper.